جميل إن شاء الله وستارت إن شاء الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه العزيز بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم قل إن كنتم تحبون الله فاتبعوني يحببكم الله ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الحلال بين والحرام بين أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي امري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم علمنا بما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما وعملا وفقا في الدين يا رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد في اول كلامنا اللهم صل على محمد في اوسط كلامنا اللهم صل على محمد في اخر كلامنا. My respected brothers and sisters in the chat, alhamdulillah jazakallah khair for taking your time out to join us for this very important talk. Seeking the deen of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, seeking the legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the greatest form of ibadah that we can do after the fara'id, right? The legacy that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left behind was the legacy of knowledge, was the legacy of ilm, and that is why for us to seek the highest level of the pleasure of Allah Azza wa Jal, we have to traverse the path of knowledge, seeking the deen of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Today specifically, we have designed or we have organized this program regarding this month specifically. June has recently been known as Pride Month, right? And a lot of media has pushed support for the LGBTQ narrative and support for this group, right? So now we as Muslims, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has mentioned that talabul ilmi faridatun ala kulli Muslim, seeking knowledge is mandatory upon every Muslim, right? So whatever pertains to us, we have to seek that knowledge. So question comes, right now, if we're seeking the knowledge, what does it mean to seek the knowledge, right? So anything that pertains to us, we have to seek that knowledge. And living in the 21st century in today's time, who is not free from the narrative of this LGBTQ storm and this pride storm and expressing your love, right? So it's pretty much everywhere. So the need for this topic is first and foremost to defend the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to understand what is the Quran's approach and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to, in regards to gender roles, in regards to homosexuality, right? What is Islam's view on this specific topic, right? Preserving the ethics now, right? One blessing we have being the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, being from the ummah, the legacy, the nation of Rasulullah, the followers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that our ethics, our tradition, everything is clear. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned al-halalu bayyinun wal-haramu bayyinun, right? What is made halal, permissible for us, has been made clear, evident, and what has been made haram for us by Allah and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam has also been made evident and clear for us, right? It has been mentioned clearly in the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when anything approaches us, we have to immediately confirm it and look back to the Sunnah and the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another need for the topic, right? I was today after the Asr prayer, I took my little one out to the library, and every time I go to the library, specifically this month, you come across certain works, right? And recently, specifically this month, in the babies and the toddlers section, you see books saying Pride 1, 2, 3, supporting transgenderism. All these books, all this material coming out, expressing love. I teach maktab, alhamdulillah, bifadlillah ta'ala, and I ask my maktab students, right? And they say it's everywhere. They say when you go into the school, you see a rainbow flag, love is love, be yourself, express yourself, right? So it's crucial that we are safeguarding the legacy, the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, preserving the ethics, the tradition of Islam, right? Following the commandments of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The hadith mentions man ra'a minkum munkaran, right? That the ummati, the believer is one who, when he sees evil, right, he doesn't feel right with evil, right? If he has the ability to change the evil with action, biyadihi, then he should change it with action, right? So right off the bat, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is teaching us that when you see any evil in society, when you see any wrong in society, that there's levels of us reacting to that evil. Number one, are we in the position to change that evil physically, taking action, right? Certain figures, certain leaders, certain people in society have that ability, right? If we're not in that level, then what's the second level? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned bilisanihi, that now we speak against that evil. This is evil. This action that we are coming across, or this thought, this philosophy, is against the teachings of Rasulullah. So bilisani is what? That now we have to change it with our tongues. And if we can't do it, then the Rasulullah mentioned biqalbihi, that even if he can't say anything or do anything, at least in our hearts we have this notion, we have this idea that this action that's being done is evil, right? So it's Pride Month, right? Specifically in June, you see the gay activists, those people who support this evil movement, right? They come and their movement becomes very aggressive, right? So that's why in today's zamana, we need to have this movement. We need to be educating ourselves regarding the LGBTQ and Islam's view on homosexuality, right? So we'll go on. And before is understanding Islam's view on homosexuality, right, we should understand how. Let me just, there's some brothers that have been requested to be mute. 1 second, let me see. Let me mute everyone, inshallah. Okay. So we have to understand how homosexuality arose in the modern world. What happened? All right. So if you look into the Western world, the European world, there was something in the 18th century known as the Enlightenment period, right? This was organized or understood and distinguished and known as the Age of Reason. What does that mean? Religion was put aside, tradition was put aside, customs were put aside in favor of what? Science, in favor of what? Individualism. We'll explain what that means. Exploration, right? Tolerance, being tolerant, right? So all this gave rise to the modern world, right? In the 18th century, the European world, the Western world, you can say, this what gave rise to the modern world, and it was marked by what? Reason, rationale, right? Science, secularism. Secularism is what? The difference, the separation between church and state. That now the political side, the government, society is free from church, right? So Enlightenment period is where you see all this scientific developments, modern achievements, right? The movement of arts being heavily produced and progressed, right? So how does this tie into LGBTQ? We see individualism specifically, right? This movement, this philosophy gained so much attraction during the 18th century, where now people started adopting this individualistic mindset. What does that mean? Pretty much that human aql is given preference over revelation. Our intellect is enough for us to understand what is right and what is wrong. We don't need revelation, right? So now tie that into the LGBTQ agenda and the gay agenda. How do you tie it to that? That now human beings and our aql, our rationale, our intellect is what's going to determine what is morally correct in terms of sexual conduct, right? So immediately they're taking religion, they're taking revelation. We as Muslims, what do we believe? We say what? We say it's the five senses, right? Where us and the Western world and philosophers agree is where? How do you gain knowledge of something? Five senses. You see something, you gain knowledge of it. You hear something, you gain knowledge of it, right? You see smoke, right? You gain knowledge of something. Where the five senses stop is where intellect comes in. So for example, you see smoke, your mind is going to tell you through your intellect that there's a fire possibly, or something's being cooked, right? So how do you gain knowledge of something? Five senses. Where the five senses stop is what? Is your intellect kicks in, right? After intellect, that's where us and the Western philosophers, those who don't accept Islam, they say above intellect, there's nothing. We say no, above intellect, above human aql is the revelation of Allah, right? So that's where us and the modern world, or you can say the European philosophers, the Western philosophers, they differ, right? So they automatically, this individualistic perspective is what? That my aql is going to tell me what's right and what's wrong, right? So I can engage in this action, I can engage in this haram action, right? As long as my aql it's okay with my aql. Another philosophy of those who have this individualistic philosophy is what? The mindset is what? That again, my motives, my objectives, my achievements, what I want to be in life is determined by me. Everything's about me, right? So there's no force from God, there's no force from society, right? So now attach that, and we'll discuss further on later on in the chat, inshallah. is, or later on in the presentation, is what? In terms of the LGBTQ society, I can determine my own identification, whether I'm male, whether I'm female, right? I can identify as something else, as transgender, as bisexual, right? So now we're determining what we want to determine. I can do what I want to do. Again, the other philosophy behind individualism is what? Everything is subjective. What does that mean? Right? There's two things in philosophy, and that is what? Subjective versus objective. Objective means something which is clear cut and it does not need any proof. For example, the sun. Right? You don't need proof for the sun. It's objective. Everyone knows there's a sun. Everyone understands there's a sun. So that's objective. Subjective is now based on your opinions, right? What do you feel? What do you perceive? So those who believe in this individualistic perception, this philosophy, everything is now based on their feelings, right? There's nothing objective, right? We believe what? The Quran, the Ahadith, and those who have this concept in the realm of Hadith is known as mutawatir. Mutawatir is what? Mass transmission. So for example, if I ask in the chat, right, who has been to China, right? Maybe none of us have been to China, but now how do we know China exists? Because mass transmission. Mass transmission means what? So many people have narrated to us that it becomes objective, that now we have no reason to deny, and now there's proof that China exists because of mass transmission, right? So that exists with the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Quran has been mass transmitted to us, so it's objective, right? Yani there's no need for it to in a way to establish its proof, right? This is one way it's established its proof. Subjective is what? It's whatever I feel, right? I want to perceive the way I want to do, that I can act the way I want to act, right? So this is how individualism is linked with the LGBTQ society. To sum it all up, you take religion out of ethics or the person's mindset, and now he is the ultimate decider of how he conducts himself, right? Everything is based on my rationale, my understanding, right? Now, historically, how did the gay movement gain so much traction? If you look prior to 1973, right, APA stands for the American Psychological Association, right? It's the leading body organization which determines a person's psyche, right? Mental disorders, what is considered a mental disorder or not, APA. Prior to 1973, people who had homosexual feelings, right, or people who were homosexual, they were considered, or they were labeled as someone who was mental, right? 1973, the APA, because of gay activists, were forced to remove homosexuality from its list of mental disorders, right? Remember, it was never removed based off scientific proof. Rather, it was removed because of pressure from the government, meaning there was many minority, the gay rights activists were trying to what? They were trying to gain minority access. So they kind of forced the APA to remove homosexuality from its list of mental disorders. So the APA removes that. Step one is achieved. Step two, now the homosexuals, the gay movement, right, the activists, they're trying to now legalize, right, gay marriage, same-sex marriage. 1986, what happens? The gay right activists, they lose the case in the Supreme Court, which allowed states to criminalize sodomy. Meaning, in other words, they try to remove the penalty for engaging. So prior to 1986, America recognized homosexual behaviors, homosexual actions as criminal. And the state was allowed to criminalize the person for engaging in homosexual actions, right? Homosexuality. Now, when this happened, right, gay right activists were not happy. So that gave birth to 1987, known as the gay agenda. What happened? This was a strategy that now the gay activists, they tried to use the law against America and try to gain minority status, which is what? They said that now gay people are born gay and we are a minority, so we should now seek minority status. And how do they do that? They try to speak as loud as possible. This is written in their works, that speak as loud as possible about gays, portray gay people as victims in society, right? Make those who go against the gays enemies, make them look like enemies, and make the gays people look in society, the homosexual looks in society as someone who's good, right? I'll actually just go to the next slide quickly, and I'll mention the three-step strategy. This is their philosophy. This was also mentioned by Kirk and Madsen. If you see in the third point, Kirk and Madsen were the ones who came up with the gay agenda. So in 1987, they had a convention with around 8,000 activists, and this is the mindset, this is the strategy they came up with to normalize homosexuality in society, in the so-called straight America. What was it? Number one, desensitize. That now we're going to overwhelm the public with so much gay-related advertisement that people become accustomed to it, that it becomes another problem, right? They see it so often, and they become so much accustomed to it that it's just another problem, right? And this is the problem with sin. Sometimes a person who's used to sin, or he sees to sin too much, or he listens to something too much, it becomes what? Another problem, right? So the first strategy on normalizing homosexuality in society was to desensitize it. How? Flooding the public with gay-related advertisement. Number two, jamming. Any oppression, any opposing views, any views which were not in favor of the homosexual views, it had to silence and suppress those views, right? So now, once a person was desensitized and they kind of got them closer, now they're trying to keep them away from the outside world and jam any opposing views. And again, this was never based on logic, as we'll come to the upcoming slides. It was always based on what? Media control, right? So number one, desensitize so much in the public that now people think of it as another problem. Number two, jam. Any opposing view, we try to suppress that view or silence that view. And number three, conversion. A psychological tactic they used was what? That they would see society. They would look at society and they would see, how did they deem a normal person? For example, how do they categorize a good person, a good male in society? What is the stereotype for a good person, for a good male in society? So when they would understand that, immediately they will attach that label to gay person. Yeah, I mean, that person is gay, right? So now they're attaching gayness, homosexuality to historical figures. For example, Abraham Lincoln, right? The ideal gay and female are and were gay. Another example, our famous actors, they say this person is gay, this person is homosexual, right? So conversion. Now the media is portraying the gay people, the homosexual people, as the good people in society. This is what you want to be, right? Desensitizing, number one. Number two, jamming. And number three, conversion. That what? Changing the person's persona, mindset, that now, how can we see how does society perceive a good person, right? Whatever stereotype they have, they took that and now they attached homosexuality and gayness to that person, right? So 2000, eventually that led to what? Vermont, Massachusetts becoming the first states to legalize same-sex marriages. And eventually Obama's second presidential campaign, not the first one. The first one, he was against homosexuality. The second campaign, Obama's campaign, as he deemed, was a victory for America, where the Supreme Court finally legalized the right for same-sex to marry, same genders to marry. So this was like a brief understanding on how LGBTQ, the movement, gained traction in society, how they gain acceptance. This is, frankly speaking, this right here is scary. Desensitized, jam, and conversion. In other words, they have control over the media, right? They've portrayed the gay people as what? People who are happy, people who are rainbows, right? Love is love. Everything is, they portray a very happy and very good, right? Now, the homosexual, and anyone who has any questions they can ask, right? Now we're going to go into some of the proofs or some of the claims the homosexuals have in order to legitimize this behavior, this feeling, right? That now, okay, homosexuality is fine in society. What are some of their beliefs? How do they legitimize it? Number one, gender in Islam, right? Frankly speaking, when LGBTQ became popular, what happened was what? Now a person can do what he wants. I am a male, I am a female, right? I'm either or. I remember when I was in school, in college, what happened was people were putting pronouns on next to their Zoom meetings. Maybe people in the chat can attest to that, right? They would put he, her, he, him, right? And I don't know, they, them. And I didn't know at that time what that was. So I put on the chat, what is this? And they said, this is how we recognize ourselves, right? This is how we identify ourselves. Nowadays, even on some legal forms, you see they ask male, female, other, right? And so I put a question mark next to my name in the Zoom meeting in the class. And what happened? The professor asked me, "What does that mean?" I said, "Oh, I haven't figured out who I am, right? I haven't figured myself out, right?" So I mean, honestly, it's frankly it's sad. The Quran mentions what that biologically, right? In terms of design, the makeup, there's only two genders, right? Male and female. Going against that is going against the fitrat of mankind. Gender is not a choice. Gender is not a choice. To such an extent where even Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited cross-dressing and imitating the opposite gender. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, "La'an Allah," that the la'anat of Allah, the curse of Allah is upon the individual a woman who imitates a man and vice versa, a man who imitates a woman. So gender in Islam speaks about gender, that there's only two genders. The Quran mentions that, right? That Allah Ta'ala has created you from a male and female, right? So in Islam, there's two genders, right? Now, another view that the homosexuals, the LGBTQ, the gay movement, they try to portray is what? It's natural. This is how they try to legitimize their view. They say what? You find it in the animal kingdom as well. We observe homosexual behavior in the animal kingdom. Therefore, it's natural. It's part of society. We as humans can engage in homosexual behavior. The response is simple. Number one, this is an incorrect observation, right? Rather, we see in the animal kingdom what happens. If a male tiger and if a tiger wants to what? Produce more tigers, a male tiger has to what? Reproduce with who? A female tiger, right? So the reproductive instinct is what? That a female and a male, what they are the ones who engage in relations to what? Survive for the next generation. So number one, we don't see it in the animal kingdom. Number two, how can we understand animal behavior? This is something strange, right? I was reading the article, and they said that over 2,000 animals express and engage in homosexual behavior. Therefore, we can also engage in homosexual behavior. I mean, honestly speaking, and one of the examples they gave is what? They said giraffes touching each other's necks is an example of homosexual behavior. This is in what? National Geographic, when you read the articles. So the question is, how can we understand or derive and deduct from two giraffes touching each other's necks that this is homosexual behavior? We don't, right? An animal is an animal, right? Just like how different societies, different cultures, there's different cultural practices. Similarly, in the animals, right? They have certain practices, but when it comes to reproducing, they engage the action in different gender, different sexes, different genders. Number three, frankly speaking, do we really get our standards from animals? Right? Like, honestly speaking, I always tell my students, if you're getting your ethics and your standards from animals, then you can go to the Bronx Zoo, right? We'll be more than happy for you to go to the Bronx Zoo, right? And we can feed you over there, no problem. You can see how the animals live over there, right? But we don't get our standards, we don't get our ethics from the animal kingdom, right? Number four is that this is a major fallacy. Fallacy is what? A error in reason. It's not natural. Homosexual behavior is not natural. It is not part of the society, right? The species of human being, insan. How? We refute them through their own theories. Darwin's famous theory is what? Evolution. What is evolution? That a species, like for example, mankind, Homo sapiens, we are surviving today because we adopted certain traits which allowed us to survive to the next generation. So Darwin's theory of evolution is what? That we as a species, we have to adopt certain characteristics, traits, which allow us to survive to the next generation. Now, if you're telling me homosexuality is natural in human beings, there is no next generation. Game over, right? We're not going to see a next generation. We're not going to see survive to the next generation, right? And unfortunately, this is what human society, those who don't have Islam in their lives, those who succumb to their nafs, they follow Darwin's theory as a philosophy in life. And what is the overall sum of Darwin's theory? What is the overall purpose of insan? If you look at Darwin's theory, is to survive. That's it. The greatest creation of Allah, we say, is to worship Allah Azza wa Jal. Darwin's theory is what? We as a species, we have to adopt those traits which allow us to survive to the next generation. That's the only purpose of life. That's it. Survival of the fittest. That's literally it, right? So that's sad that your whole life is just to survive, right? So saying that it's natural is what? Going against our own or your own theories of Darwin's theory of evolution. There is no generation anymore, right? Another claim homosexuals have, and this is like a guilt, they say God made me like this, right? This is how they try to legitimize their feelings, right? I am homosexual. I engage in homosexual behavior, conduct, right? What is one of the ways they try to legitimize it? God made me like this. And in reality, right, this is a hoax, right? I can't help it if God made me like this, right? You come across this objection or this claim, right? How do you answer it? That this gay gene is known as a hoax. They claim that people are born gay. In reality, the Quran mentioned before, La tabdila li khalqillah, that there's no change to the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal. Yes, there can be deficiency, there can be minor altercation, but to change the natural fitrat of insan, the Quran mentions La tabdila li khalqillah, right? That there's no change. You can't alter the creation of Allah Azza wa Jal, right? So the way Allah created us is in accordance to our fitrat. And how is our fitrat? The way the Quran mentioned, that either we're male or female, right? And if you're a male, naturally when you're born with what? As the Quran mentions, and this is very important, the Quran, the Surah of Rasulullah mentioned that every person is born upon his fitrat. Every baby is born upon his natural disposition. It's society which has an impact on that individual. So what is the example Rasulullah gave? Every person is born upon his fitrat or her fitrat. In other words, Muslim, Islam, submissive to Allah Azza wa Jal. But his parents make him Yahud. His parents make him Christian, right? Society makes him homosexual, right? So scientists themselves, the APA, the American Psychological Association, have yet to provide any proof that there is a gay gene, that a person is actually born with DNA making that person homosexual or have homosexual behaviors. In other words, this is a fallacy, this is a hoax. A person has homosexual behaviors, tendencies, because of the impact of society, the effect of society. He's not born. A person is never ever born with homosexual behaviors, right? You prove it through the Quran, La tabdila li khalqillah, and number two, the gay gene hoax, through science and through the APA, that they have yet to provide proof that a person is born gay. You're never born gay, all right? So that claim, that proof, or that attempt to legitimize homosexuality is gone, all right? Another one is what? Private. What's the problem? Two men are in the room by themselves, right? Two females are in the room by themselves. Why does it concern you? It's in the privacy of their own homes, right? Answer to that objection or claim is what? In reality, it's not private, right? It's being spread in society, right? Right, mashallah, I see in the comment there are studies on identical twins that there's no such thing as a gay gene. Very good, right? Two twins, right? Biologically, outwardly, they can have the same what? Makeup, but inwardly, they have different personalities, right? So mashallah, the brother in the comment is what? Showing what? That yes, even through twins biologically, outwardly, they have the same features, but inwardly, different DNA, right? So privacy, what's the problem? Why do you care what two men in the room, two females in the room engage, right? Allah protect, right? Number one, it's not privacy, right? It's in being spread in society, right? And number two, it's not private because it does affect society. The leading cause of AIDS, hepatitis B, hepatitis, anal cancer, rectum cancer, right? Gay bowel syndrome is because of someone who engaged in homosexual behavior, in lawat, homosexual actions, right? So homosexual behavior leads to the spread of mass transmitted diseases. So now you're affecting society. How are you telling an individual that it's private, right? Where you're the leading this movement, these individuals are the ones who are the leading cause. That's why in 1988, you see at that time, president was who? Ronald Reagan. What happened? The AIDS epidemic was what? That AIDS was produced originally by who? Homosexuals. Did you know that? AIDS was introduced to society because of engaging in homosexual behavior. Once that happened, the 1980s witnessed the AIDS epidemic, where now men who were engaging in homosexual behavior, they were spreading this disease of HIV/AIDS, right? And that's why 1988 was the year President Ronald Reagan was forced to discuss this problem of AIDS, right? So in reality, for a LGBTQ person, for a homosexual to claim that it's private, why do you care what happens? It's not private because number one, it's actually affecting society on a macro level, and number two, you're causing the decline of the population, right? And then finally, how nowadays, right, is gender equality. They say, oh, men and female are equal, right? In reality, this is just wrong understanding, right? We as Muslims, we say what? A male and female both have equal chances going to Jannah. That is what it means as gender equality. The Quran mentions, right, that that a male or female, whoever does good deeds, فَلَنُحْيَنَّهُ حَيَاةً طَيِّبَةً, right, that we will give him a righteous life, right? وَلَنَجْزِيَنَّهُمْ أَجْرَهُمْ بِأَحْسَنِ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ, that when this person, be it a male or female, both have an equal chance going to Jannah. That's what we mean by gender equality. There's no correlation between equality and roles, right? How do I give this example for us to understand? A simple example, a basketball team, right? A basketball team consists of 5 players. Each person has a chance to score, make a point, but each player on the team has a role in society, in that team. Similarly, also, a male and female have roles, right, which have been prescribed by who? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mentioned earlier, when the Enlightenment period took place, right, aql, rationale, took religion out of a person understanding what is right and wrong. So now who determines what's right and wrong? Society. A random Tom, Dick, and Harry is the one who decides what's right for me, what's wrong for me, or I myself decide. So now in today's time, who are the ones determining roles in society? The same people who took Islam, Christianity, Judaism out of society, right? So now you're now allowing your aql, your nafs, to determine what's right and wrong, right? We look at the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What role did he play in society? The Sahaba, the wives, the ummahat, radiallahu anhum ajma'in, right? What role did they play in society? So gender equality does not have any effect on roles, right? Yes, we have this concept of roles, but that doesn't affect a person's chance of going to Jannah, right? And I give you the example of the basketball team. A point guard has his role, a shooting guard has his role, but every person has an equal chance to score a point, right? Similarly, also over here. So this claim, right, this attempt of gender equality, men and female have the same role in society, it's going to cause chaos. It's going to cause, and you see it causing chaos, right? You see in New York City, I'm not one to judge. I'm not one to say anything wrong. But unfortunately, they're telling the women folk to work. Yes, if you have a halal job, if you have a halal occupation, no problem. But now, because of that, New York City is forced to what? 3K. Before pre-K is 3K, then there's 2K. Because now why? Women because of working. And I'm saying there's nothing wrong with working, but now who's tending to the children? I'm giving an example, right? So now New York City is forced to open up 3K, 2K, right? Childcare, all these programs, because the LGBTQ is forcing this narrative of what? Gender roles. Females are equal when it comes with to men. But in reality, we say the same thing. Men and female both have an equal chance going to Jannah. To sum it all up, we have Allah and the Rasul determining the roles, and what happens? You have for them, their society, the modern era, determining what is right and what is wrong, and what is roles in society. Now, I gave refutations to their views, their proofs. Now we look at Imam Razi. Imam Razi, rahimahullah, was a genius, right? He has a tafsir, Mafatihul Ghaib, right? We look into his tafsir, and he gives 5 rational reasons on why homosexuality is haram. He doesn't use Quran and Hadith. Now we're gonna talk to them on their level. You don't believe in the Quran, you don't believe in the Hadith. Okay, fine. We will rationally prove why homosexuality is not proper, is immoral, you can say. Right? What's number 1? Imam Razi says every action has a purpose. Every action has a purpose. So, for example, right, when we look at a human being and when he engages in relations with his spouse, right, there's a benefit for that. What's the benefit? A potential offspring, right? So, although a man and a female, when they have relations, yes, they may have relations, right, to succumb or to reduce the shahawat, but there's also a benefit to that. There's a potential outcome, which is what? Having a child, right? Increasing in your lineage, right? So every action of a human being has a purpose. Doing an action without a purpose, living your life without a purpose, is resemblance of of animals, not humans. The characteristics of animals is the attribute of animals is what? Some action they do has no purpose, right? So intercourse via the rectum, when a male has relations with a male, it resembles animalistic behavior. Why? There's no purpose behind that. There's no potential benefit. There's no potential outcome. Rather than succumbing to a person's nafs, right? So Imam Razi in this first reason is saying what? That insan is the greatest creation. The Quran mentions what? وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam, right? That we have given honor to the Bani Adam, the children of Adam, insan. The species of insan is the greatest creation. And one of the reasons why is because we have aql and we have a purpose. Every action, I eat so I can do ibadat. I sleep so I can do ibadat. I drink water so I can have the energy to do ibadat. Every action of mine, we seek knowledge to get closer to Allah Azza wa Jalla. Similarly, also relations, it also has a benefit, which is what? To keep ourselves chaste, right? To increase the lineage of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? But when a person engages in homosexual behaviors, there's no potential purpose, there's no potential outcome, there's no potential benefit, as opposed to what? Succumbing to your nafs. And eating, for example, for your nafs, or engaging in relations for your own nafs, is the attributes of animals, not the attributes and the characteristics of human beings. All right, that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, Imam Razi mentions, hypothetically speaking, okay, we say homosexual relations is fine, no problem, right? He's saying we give it to you, no problem. We say homosexual behaviors is fine, right? But he says the harm that it causes lasts and spans a lifetime. So now, for a person to engage in so-called temporary pleasure in exchange for a lifetime of harm and imperfection, it goes against what? Aql. It's not a decision a wise person will do, right? That now for the mere temporary benefit, right, you're going to sacrifice, or you're going to do that and in sacrifice of what? A span of a lifetime, right? And like I mentioned, how's some harms? AIDS, right? A person now lives his whole life with AIDS, right? Or his rectum is what? Severely damaged his whole life, right? So these are some potential harms that he has to live with for his whole life in exchange of what? Mere temperament, or temporary temperament, right? Pleasure, excuse me. Reason number two, right? Reason number three, it creates hatred. Allah says in the Quran that وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً, that when a male and a female, when a spouse, right, when they engage in halal relations, it creates love, it creates bonds, it creates a connection between the two genders. This is the Quran mentioning, right? وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. But now, when homosexuals engage in their haram actions, it creates the opposite. It creates and it breeds hostility, hatred, and they can't tolerate each other, right? And you see in society what happens. Homosexuals are the ones who are very aggressive. They're full of animosity. They're full of hatred, right? They're very aggressive. Why? Because of this evil action. They're going against the fitrat, their natural disposition. A person engages in halal relations, it creates love between the spouses. It creates bonds between the spouses, a compassion between the spouses. But when people engage in haram, homosexual actions, it creates the opposite, hatred. Reason number four, that homosexuality, it leads to diseases, right? The way Allah Ta'ala has created the female passageway, it's with the ability to absorb the semen. Allah Ta'ala created the female's passageway with the ability to absorb sperm, right? Semen. But take homosexuals, right? And now when a person engages in homosexual behavior, what's the problem? The way Allah Ta'ala has created the male passageway, the rectum, it does not have the ability to absorb that semen, right? So that is what now that semen is just stays in the passageway, and that leads to severe diseases. I gave the example as AIDS, right? The gay bowel syndrome is what? That now feces is stuck in the person's passageway. It's not coming out, right? These are so many diseases that a person who engages in homosexual behavior, he experiences. Why? Because the semen is not being absorbed. Allah Ta'ala has not developed the rectum in a way for the person's semen to be absorbed, right? So it leads to many diseases. This is the fourth aqli reason why homosexuality is against natural disposition and it's immoral in society. And finally, a more biological design, right? Without going into too much visualization, right? Imam Razi says the male private part is the designer. It's been designed as the initiator, right? And the female private part has been designed, created as the receiver. Reversing the roles goes against nature. It goes against the divine wisdom of Allah Azza wa Jalla. So Imam Razi gave these 5 reasons I mentioned over here, right? I'll send you all these PowerPoints again afterwards. But he's pretty much saying Allah Ta'ala has created male and female, and they have the biological designs, right? And engaging in homosexual behavior goes against the divine hukum of Allah, the wisdom of Allah, as well as the natural biological design of human beings as well. All right. So these were 5 aqli reasons, rational reasons we can give to the homosexual community and show that on a logical perspective, this behavior is also immoral. Right. Finally, I know time is getting late. People are tired. I do apologize. But we'll end off with what? Lessons from the past. Right. The story of Lut alayhi salam. Everyone knows the story of Lut alayhi salam, that Allah Ta'ala wanted to test the people of Lut alayhi salam, and Allah Ta'ala sent Jibreel and a few angels in the form of beautiful men. Right? And when they came to Lut alayhi salam was sad, distressed. He realized that if his community found out that these young men are here, now the people, the community will want to engage in haram action. So what happened? We'll learn later on in the story that it was actually the wife of Lut alayhi salam who informed and gave the intel to the community that Lut alayhi salam has these guests, which were in reality angels, and she said that they're the most handsome men I've ever seen. So when they heard this, they came and they wanted to attempt to engage in haram relations. That's when Lut alayhi salam told his people, are you really coming to men to engage in your shahawat, your lust? وَتَذَرُونَ مَا خَلَقَ لَكُمْ رَبُّكُمْ مِنْ أَزْوَاجِكُمْ بَلْ أَنْتُمْ قَوْمٌ عَادُونَ. You are transgressing. Right? Allah Ta'ala has created females for you, but you want to engage in what? You want to engage in homosexual behaviors, right? Then what happened? Upon hearing this, the people of Lut alayhi salam, they did not take heed, they did not listen. قَالُوا لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهِ يَا لُوطُ لَتَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الْمُخْرَجِينَ. They threatened Lut alayhi salam, if you do not stop, let us be. We're going to engage in haram relations. Otherwise, we're going to kick you out of society. We're going to take you out of our community. And what did Lut alayhi salam say? قَالَ إِنِّي لِعَمَلِكُم مِّنَ الْقَالِينَ. That I am despising of your shameful action. Right? What was the outcome of the people of Lut alayhi salam? Jibreel told Lut alayhi salam, don't worry, we are angels. They cannot harm us. Right? They tried to engage in homosexual behavior with the angels. Right? The angels were protected by Allah Azza wa Jal. Lut alayhi salam tried to give da'wah to his people. They did not listen. What's the lesson? What happens? He made dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. The hukum came that leave your people. Leave your people. The punishment of Allah is coming. And what a severe punishment came. فَلَمَّا جَاءَ أَمْرُنَا جَعَلْنَا عَالِيَهَا سَافِلَهَا وَأَمْطَرْنَا عَلَيْهَا حِجَارَةً مِّن سِجِّيلٍ مَنْضُودٍ. Allah Ta'ala protect us, right? The Jibreel literally came and took the whole community the next morning and lifted them to the skies, and upside down they came, and like that they ceased to exist, right? So the lessons we take from the people of Lut alayhi salam is what? Number one, not supporting sin like the wife of Lut alayhi salam. Ulama Mufassirun, they mention that the wife of Lut did not herself engage in homosexual behavior. However, because she supported this evil, immoral sin action, and she leaked the intel to the community that these men who were in reality angels, right? She said they have come engage, and she wanted them to engage, and she supported their evilness. She also became shamil. She was also included in the punishment, right? That's why the Quran gave the amr to Lut alayhi salam, illa ajuzan, that you take your believers, the punishment of Allah is coming, and leave your wife behind also. Leave your wife behind also, because why? She didn't engage in homosexual action. She supported homosexual action behavior. Number two, speaking out against evil. A lesson from Lut alayhi salam. Lut alayhi salam was what? Inni li'amalikum min al-qalin. He said what? I hate your action. I despise your action. So Lut alayhi salam is what? He is speaking against evil, right? Not being afraid in today's time of being called homophobic. Right? So what they call us homophobic. We're not tolerant. Any other label, extremists, right? Our job is da'wah, right? That we have to call to what is right and what is wrong, right? And hidayat is from who? From Allah Azza wa Jal, right? So when Lut alayhi salam, he spoke against the evil, and they did not take heed. So we in today's society, we cannot be fearful of what? Of being labeled homophobic, being labeled extremists, right? We have to speak against this evil. Lut alayhi salam, his community were telling him what? We're going to kick you out. We're taking you out. That's it, right? Then what happened? Lut alayhi salam, when the people were not taking heed, eventually he made dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. This is our lesson also. That number one, we preach. Number two, guidance from Allah Azza wa Jal. And number three, we make dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. And another lesson we take from the life of Lut alayhi salam, right, is what? Adopting taqwa and following the Prophet, right? Lut alayhi salam would always tell his people, as the Quran mentions, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَأَطِيعُونِي. Fear Allah Azza wa Jal, adopt the taqwa, and obey me. And he was the Prophet at the time. Obviously, we are the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, so we adopt taqwa and we follow the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, right? Just some ahadith highlighting the fear or the sin of homosexuality. So we also have some narrations. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam mentioned, "Inna akhwafa ma akhafu ala ummati amalu qawm Lutin." That the greatest fears I have for my ummah is the action of the people of Lut alayhi salam, right? That the people of my ummah, they engage in homosexual behavior, right? And homosexual actions, right? And unfortunately, what's so sad, I don't know if those who follow me, I put on my status that I was taking my daughter to the library, and I saw that sometimes it's the Muslims or the so-called Muslims who are writing books on homosexual behavior, supporting homosexual behavior. Love is love. right? Even here, I live in Queens, Flushing Library. I went the other day, and I come across what? I come across a book written by a Muslim, and she is saying what? It's okay to be homosexual. The achievements the homosexual community, the gay activists achieved in society. And this is Rasulullah saying what? That the greatest fear I have for my ummah is that they engage in the action of the people of Lut alayhi salam. Right? So Allah protect us from this evilness, right? Number two, you have this hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, right? That arba'atun yasbahuna fi ghadabillah wa yamsuna fi saqatillah. That there's four people who are always in the anger of Allah Azza wa Jal. The morning they spend in the anger of Allah, and in the night they spend in the wrath of Allah Azza wa Jal. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he was the one who narrated this hadith. He asked Rasulullah, Man hum ya Rasulullah? Who are these people? Number one, al-mutashabbihina min ar-rijal bin nisa, men who imitate women. Now you're cross-dressing, right? And I don't know, right? You're acting like a female. You're trying to be more feminine. You're those who are men. They try to make their voices like females. They walk like females. Allah protect. And females are now trying to be like males, right? Right. So number two, Rasulullah women who imitate men. Number three, I see the comments also. Those who commit bestiality. MashaAllah, the comments also mention, right? If they say love is love, eventually leads to what? Incest, pedophilia, also bestiality. Nowadays, I heard those who are in the homosexual community, there's something known as what? Furries? Anyone heard of furries? I don't know, this weird thing that now they're dressing up like animals. So Rasulullah mentioned that what? When your haya leaves, إِذَا فَاتَكَ الْحَيَاءُ فَاسْنَعْ مَا شِئْتَ. When your haya, when your modesty is gone, do what you want. So now it starts gradual, right? Gradually means what? That a person, he engages in homosexual behaviors. After that, now it leads to what? Bestiality. Then it potentially leads to what? Pedophilia, incest. What's wrong with that? It's subjective, right? I want to do what I want to do, right? And the fourth one Rasulullah mentioned is that the one الَّذِينَ يَأْتُونَ الرِّجَالِ, the ones who approach men to fulfill their desires. Again, showing the hurmat, the prohibition, the impermissibility of homosexual actions, right, behavior. Another hadith is Rasulullah mentioned, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ مَنْ عَمِلَ عَمَلَ قَوْمِ لُوطٍ. 3 times Rasulullah made badwa, right? This is severe warning for us, right? That may the curse of Allah be upon the individual who engages in the action of homosexuality, right? The action of the people of Lut alayhi salam, right? So this was the curse of Rasulullah is on the individual 3 times, right? So those are some ahadith. Coming to the end of the presentation, the narrative today is what? Pride. Even that itself is a shame, right? That now they're coming out of the closet. People are clapping their hands. Wow, this person came out of the closet. We're so happy, right? We take pride in ourselves, right? Be you. Express yourselves. Even if it gets to go to Allah and Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Again, individualistic society. Allah and Rasul are gone. Who determines ethics? Me. I came out of the closet. Wah wah. We're so proud of you, right? You. It's as if he gained the Nobel Prize. Allah kabanda. He's claiming himself to be homosexual, and society is taking pride in that. This is in opposite of the quality of the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah mentioned what? A true believer is one who, when a sin is committed, ma haka fi sadrik. When a sin takes place, when he himself is committing sin, there's a knock in his heart. He realizes, wait a minute, there's something wrong, right? Taking pride in sin is the opposite of the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? That's why Rasulullah sallallahu multiple times in the Quran, you see what? قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّى. The one who takes care of his nafs. He does not succumb to his nafs. He purifies his nafs. He rectifies his nafs, right? That's the one who gains success. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ تَزَكَّاهَا. Right? He's focusing on his nafs. That's why Rasulullah mentioned what? That there's a part in the body, there's a piece of in the jasad, right? There's a piece of flesh. If you take care of that part, then it takes care of the whole body. And what is that? Alawihi al-qalb, right? That is the heart, right? Pride is a destructive sin. We take the example of Fir'aun and Qarun. Fir'aun had the biggest pride. Now these people are walking around proud about themselves. rainbow, be you, love is love, right? They're boasting without any shame. They're challenging Allah Azza wa Jal. Not only are they engaging in sin, one is a person engages in sin and he realizes that he's doing wrong, right? But now, when a person is so accustomed to sin that now he is okay with that sin, that's a concern. Because the lowest level of Iman that Rasulullah mentioned for any believer is he knows what's right and he knows what's wrong. If you don't have that, your Iman is in stake, right? If you don't determine what's right and you don't determine what's wrong, you don't have that feeling, your Iman is in stake, right? The example of Fir'aun is what? He claimed to be the greatest. He had pride. We look at his example. And Qarun is what? He said, I have all this wealth, right? So taking pride in sin is not from the characteristics of the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes, we have been created with a tendency to sin. We always make tawbah to Allah Azza wa Jal, right? If we make tawbah to nasuha, sincere tawbah, right? As long as we have sincerity in our tawbah, Allah Ta'ala always forgives our sins. Not the opposite, right? That now we're taking pride in our sin. We're happy with our sin. That's not the quality of the believer. And now, if you know someone, or if a person may have gay thoughts or tendencies, how do you go overcome that? Number one, like I mentioned, realizing it's a sin, right? Very important. And you may, how do I say it? I may throw shots at some people nowadays, or I may be attacking someone, but I don't. Nowadays, a lot of Aimma, a lot of the scholars in today's time, they say what? If a person does not engage in homosexual behavior, but he has homosexual thoughts, he's fine. That's half correct. What I say? That's half correct. Why? Having homosexual thoughts is a spiritual sickness that also has to be removed from the heart. Just like pride, envy, jealousy, laziness is also, that all deals with the spiritual heart, and you have to remove that. Rasulullah mentioned a person who has pride in his heart, he's not going to Jannah. Right? So similarly, also, merely not engaging in homosexual behaviors, but having homosexual thoughts is not enough. Yes, if a person is fighting those thoughts, that's alhamdulillah, he's getting ready to change. But a person cannot say, I did not engage in homosexual behavior, but I have homosexual thoughts and tendencies. That's incorrect. No, that's a spiritual weakness. That's a spiritual sickness. You have to what? You have to get rid of those tendencies. So how do you do that? Number one, getting ready to change. Allah says in the Quran that He will not change you until you're willing to change yourselves. Number two, don't fall into temptations. The Quran mentions La taqrabu zina, don't even come close to zina. So yes, you have homosexual thoughts, tendencies. That's your test. You have to overcome that. Don't fall into those tendencies. Don't fall into those desires and those thoughts. Number three, work on rectifying your nafs. Number four, constantly make dua to Allah Azza wa Jal. Number five, not entertaining evil thoughts. Like I mentioned, every single one of us, if we have evil thoughts, the Quran mentions what? If a thought comes to you and it leaves, you're fine. But now if a thought comes to you, oh wow, and you're engaging and you're constantly thinking about those evil thoughts, that's a sin. So entertaining evil thoughts is a sin. Entertaining homosexual thoughts is a sin if you're not fighting those tendencies. And number five or number six is what? Being in a good and righteous environment. Society has a major impact. Society is what pushes a person to have homosexual behaviors, immoralities, constantly engaging in sin is what has an impact on a person, and it leads him to homosexual behavior. So opposite of that is being in righteous behavior environments, being in good behavior, masajid, good people around good people, right? Our role, Rasulullah and all the prophets were shepherds. Why? Is because it creates alertness. You're a shepherd, you have your sheep, you have your flock. What are you always vigilant about? Making sure a wolf does not attack your flock. Making sure a sheep is not lost. Making sure there's no predatory animal waiting to attack your flock and your sheep. So this quality of alertness and vigilance is being introduced into the prophets before they became prophets. So we also have to be vigilant and alert. What is society pushing in our narrative, in media, in our libraries, right? How can we educate our families, right? Going to the library, what is being taught in our libraries, in our schools? When my children go to school, what is in the school? Is there a homosexual rainbow flag, LGBTQ narrative, pride is pride, good is good, evil is evil, don't be intolerant. We accept all. That's not the reality, right? That's not what Islam promotes, right? That's not how Islam. So we have to educate our families, be vigilant, never support sin, right? Where some Muslim movements they made a problem was what? That we are a minority in America. Homosexuals are also a minority in America. So if they support us, we will support them. We don't need the support. We don't need the support of the homosexual community to gain political movement in the Western world, right? So we don't want their support. They can keep their support to themselves. We don't support sin. Just because I myself am not engaging in homosexual behavior doesn't mean I am happy or allowing the other person to engage, right? Making dua to protect ourselves, our families, and taking action. Honestly, frankly speaking, I have a little one. I don't have intention of sending my little one to school after finding out from our maktab students that in school some teachers are homosexuals, they're transgenders, they don't know what gender they are, they're bisexual, right? So you have to take action, writing letters to the principal that I don't want my children, I don't want my family, my brothers engaging, my sisters engaging, my spouses engaging in this partaking in this evil action, right? So taking action, making sure our children are being preserved with the ethics of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So to sum it all up, right? I know it became a little bit long. Allah Ta'ala reward you all. There's no logical, scientific proof supporting being born homosexual. Society plays a huge impact. Society today has succumbed to their nafs, right? Allah is saying that don't you see those people, individuals who took their nafs, their desire as their Lord, whatever their nafs tells them, they engage in that nafs, right? They engage in that action, right? So society plays a huge impact. MashaAllah, I saw in the chat, right? If you take out Islam, right, who determines ethics? Yourself. So today you're doing homosexuality, homosexual behaviors, conduct. Tomorrow you're going to be doing pedophilia, Allah protect. You're going to be doing bestiality, right? Right. So homosexuality, as I gave some hadith, Rasulullah has mentioned this is the la'nat of Allah upon this individual. It's a major sin. We don't support it. Protect ourselves and family. Finally, alhamdulillah, we have started Ihya as-Sunnah, dedicated to reviving the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is to preserve the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? So us reviving the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, believe me, in today's time, the answer to everything lies in the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's the best role model, right? So if you have any questions or concerns, you can always contact us at Ihya as-Sunnah Academy at gmail.com. Alhamdulillah, Allah give us tawfiq for those who engage in this program, for those who are here, right? If you have any questions, you can ask any questions right now. If you have any comments, you can have any comments. What's next? We do have intention, we do have plan on having more programs on istikhara. Next month is Muharram. We're going to have a program on that as well, inshallah. I'll just give a few minutes if anyone has any questions. But again, this is an ongoing problem. We have to be vigilant, right? Unfortunately, it's not a problem on a logical basis because, like I mentioned, they are just trying to entertain their own desires. We are giving it, we're discussing it now, right? But in reality, this is not something that needs or should have been discussed in the first place, but because it gained so much traction, right? So we gave the logical proofs on why homosexuality is haram, right? And we also gave how it affects society and also in terms of Islam. If there's any questions anyone can ask, you can unmute yourselves. You can ask any questions or any comments, and then we'll end off, inshallah. Khair, inshallah. You can always contact us, inshallah. Today is the day of Friday. Allah give us all tawfiq to increase in the durood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Just one action, and we'll end off with this, inshallah. Rasulullah has mentioned the one who recites 3 times in the morning, Raditu billahi rabba, wa bil islami dina, wa bi Muhammadin rasulan wa nabiyya. 3 times. Raditu billahi rabba, wa bil islami dina, wa bi Muhammadin sallallahu alaihi wasallam rasulan wa nabiyya. 3 times in the morning and 3 times in the evening. Allah Ta'ala will make this person pleased on the day of judgment, right? Because we are saying we are pleased with Allah as our Lord. We're not allowing our nafs, right? We're not allowing our desires to determine what's good for us. Rather, we're happy with Islam as our religion. We're happy that Islam tells us that homosexuality is haram. We're happy with Rasulullah as our messenger, and we're also happy with Allah as our Lord, inshallah. Yes, I will forward that, inshallah, to the chat. And I'll also be sharing this PowerPoint, inshallah. May Allah give us tawfiq to act upon what has been said, protect our society, protect the ummah from any wrong, from all immoralities, from all haram, and let us resurrect and revive the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and be resurrected with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the day of judgment. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, inshallah.